Hello again, my wonderful students. I am excited to talk about sections 102 and 104. Such interesting sections, frankly, because we're right in the middle of the saints and the redress and trying to fulfill Zion's camp and the teachings of the Lord. And all of a sudden, we have this discussion on church discipline. And I love President Packer's discussion on discipline or his teaching. He says the verb discipline means to subject to discipline, and earlier use to instruct, educate, train, and later use more especially to train to habits of order and subordination to bring under control. So in these early days of discipline, we were talking about the importance of saving souls. We're talking about protecting the innocent, protecting the church. In fact, we don't even use these as disciplinary. We don't even talk about disciplinary councils or excommunication anymore. These terms are kind of no longer being in use today. But still, they're very pragmatic in what the Lord is actually teaching in these sections. So section 102 specifically, we have this, what they call is a form of constitution of the High Council. So we had some need for people to be kind of brought under understanding, perhaps is a good way that we can say it. And people needed to have rights. We need to have rights for the accuser, and we need to have rights for the accused. So we have this, what the Lord says here, 12 high priests, 1 or 3 presidents as the case might require. And then he says in verse 2, the High Council was appointed by revelation for the purpose of settling important difficulties which might arise in the church. Then we have the names of those who are included. And then we have in verse 4 that they are supposed to be making decisions based upon the law of heaven. And then we have some very specific teachings that come within this. So the rights of the accuser and the accused. I think this is fascinating. It says the council should try no case without both parties being present or having had an opportunity to be present. Neither should they hear one person's complaint before his case is brought up for trial. Neither should they suffer the character of anyone to be opposed before the High Council without the person being present and ready to defend him or herself. That the minds of the counselors be not prejudiced for or against anyone whose case they may possibly have to act upon. I love that the Lord is teaching them right off the bat that they need to be listening, that they need to be not making prior judgments in order to be able to make sure that these men are being treated, or men and women are being treated fairly. We talk about the responsibility of judging in these verses. In the study guide, I talk about that as well, and how important it was that Joseph said that they needed to pay attention, that they need to be sitting up straight, that they needed to be not sleeping during this time because the salvation of the souls of men were dependent upon some of these decisions. So we look at this, we look about some of these results, and we can see some of these verses in here. How is a stake council conducted? And then we have some of the results of the church discipline, which you can just look at here. But you can see in verses 10 through 11, the presiding officers, the casting of lots, which we do today still, the counseling as a council, the decision by the president. It is the president's decision, not the decision of the quorum, but it's the president who makes that final decision. And then the records being transferred to the first presidency, and then options for an appeal, which is happening, which can happen as well as today. So we have these decisions that are being made. We have these courts that are actually happening. They're supposed to be happening in verse 23, according to the mind and will of the Lord, which I love. People must pay attention to the will of the Lord in order to make this happen correctly. Verses 30 through 32 talk about those high councils. So I'm just going to read this to you. High counselors play a vital role in the administration of the stake. Figuratively speaking, they constitute the right arm of the stake presidency. The degree to which they are faithful, sorry, I realize I made some of these mistakes here, to which they are faithful, efficient, and willing to work determines their value to the stake presidency, and goes far in determining determining the progress made by the stake in the ward organizations of which they have been called to serve. Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Then continue on with high councils. The duties and assignments of high counselors are very extensive and varied. Such assignments absorb much time and stakes for the stake presidencies fully utilize their high counselors in carrying forward the church program. Experiences have shown that it is wisdom for stake presidencies to make very extensive use of their high counselors, because the progress of the work of the Lord within a stake and the efficiency with which it is carried forward will be determined to a large extent by the use of high counselors by the stake presidency. I'll just simply reiterate the importance of high counselors as well. Sometimes we kind of jab and talk about their talks, and sometimes they're boring. But in reality, the high counselors are the right arm of the stake president and the stake presidency, and they're speaking and working for the Lord. I also want to just bear testimony of the importance of these councils, that members of the church are saved. I have seen many people saved through these councils, that perhaps they were disfellowshipped or excommunicated, but they have come back to the church. They have received their temple blessings. They have been reordained, or given their priesthood privileges back. And these people have made great strides because of these courts and this disciplinary council that has taken place in the past. So again, just some pragmatic things that the Lord is talking about in section 102 regarding councils. And then in section 104, even more pragmatic. We're talking about the buying of land, staying out of debt. We're talking about the united firm and the temporal needs of the church. And so that's what we're going to see specifically in section 104. Here's the background just a little bit. I know that there's a lot more, but Joseph Smith wrote to Orson Hyde, "Unless we can obtain help, I myself cannot go to Zion. And if I do not go, it will be impossible to get my brethren in Kirtland, any of them, to go. And if we do not go, it is in vain for Eastern brethren to think of going." They were trying to create this Zion, but they didn't have a way to do it. The firm had borrowed $15,000 that was supposed to be paid in 5 years from banks and from large Eastern banks to purchase the goods and property in Missouri, and they had lost their collateral, so they were really stuck. The Lord gives financial advice throughout this section of the Doctrine and Covenants. He also gives some through his leaders as well, which I love. And Eldon Tanner is one of my favorites, where he says, "I know of no situation where happiness and peace of mind have increased with the amassing of property beyond the reasonable wants and needs of family." In our day, people really do compare themselves. They want to have as much as the Jones. More frequently, young adults want to have what their parents had. They want to live in a similar house. They want to drive similar cars. And the reality is they haven't worked as hard as their parents have worked in order to have that kind of benefit. It is worth every effort that you have to be able to make the money, to be able to get out of debt, and to be able to provide for your family, for men especially, and for women to be wise in their finances. In my Eternal Family class, we often teach about finances, and especially in marriage, and how finances really can be a negative or a positive, have negative or positive impact on marriages. It is absolutely critical. I know for myself, all of my siblings paid for our college. My parents did not have the money to do so. I have many, many stories regarding the importance of stewardship and how my dad and mom taught us to use our finances wisely. First of all, to pay our tithing, to give a generous offering, but also to work hard and to save and to not spend what we didn't have. J. Reuben Clark talks about the difference between stewardship and ownership, which is what the Lord is talking about here as well, especially as we get into consecration. In verse 16, the Lord states, "But it must needs be done in mine own way. And behold, this is the way that I, the Lord, have decreed to provide for my saints, that the poor shall be exalted and the rich are made low." We have people who are agents, and this is what he says here. "The basic principle of all revelations on the United Order is that everything we have belongs to the Lord. Therefore, the Lord may call upon us for any and all the property with which we have, because it belongs to him. This, I repeat, is a basic principle." And we can see that in verses 14 through 17, then specifically in verses 54 to 57. The prophets have counseled us for years to stay out of debt. I remember President Hinckley talking about staying out of debt right before one of the crashes in 2008. I've been concerned with the raising of house prices and things of that nature, that we as a people need to be more prepared than ever before, as Elder Bednar has talked about, for the days that are coming as we are bringing in the second coming of Jesus Christ. We need to be able to be stewards that need to be able to share and consecrate our stewardship and consecrate our lives for whatever it is, according to what the Lord will require of his people. The Lord does want to bless us. He wants to bless us as much as he possibly can, but we have to be able to do what we need to do in order to be able to receive the blessings that he has for us. I challenge you to look at your debt. I challenge you to look at your finances. I challenge you to look at what your needs and your wants are, and determine what it is that you can do to better be prepared for the days that are ahead, and also for now, so that you will not be in bondage to debt, and that you can be free and be able to act as agents and act according to the desire and will of your heart, and to be instruments in the hands of the Lord as he needs you to be. And I say that with that invitation in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.